useful questions. So starting out, let's look at organizational layout. So in this example, we're going to be talking about Bulldog Schools, and specifically bulldogschools.org. And so that's going to be our domain name. And the way I like you to think about picking your domain name is that it's branding. By all means, you can use the K-12 ORUS that's given to you by the state. Alternatively, you can go to GoDaddy or Enom and purchase another domain name that suits you better. From our end, it's really doesn't matter. It's how you want that email to be presented to the outside world. That's one thing. And then it's secondly, how you want your users to be logging in. So from a technical point of view, it's actually a non-issue. It's more up to the thought leaders at your school who want to decide on branding. So the next way to sort of organize our users is with what we call organizational units. And organizational units are a tree structure where one user lives inside of one organization, and they inherit the policies that are given to them by their organizational unit. So we can create a tree. One has students, one has teachers, and we can say for students, they get these services. For example, they get everything but chat. But for teachers, we could say they get everything including chat. And then you place all your teachers into one OU, all your students into the other OU. And then lastly, it's going to be groups. And groups is where we're talking about email lists. So it's kind of like a list serve. You could have English teachers at bulldogschools.org. You send to that email address. All the English teachers receive that. Similarly, you can share documents, sites, anything else that allows sharing, you can use with groups. So if I want to share a document with all the English teachers, it's as simple as sharing it with Bulldog teachers at bulldogschools.org. So what I'd like to do now is to jump over to the control panel. Right now I have my Chrome window shared, so let me see how I can get both my Chrome and my Firefox running. So I'm going to switch desktops. Let me know if you're able to see this current slide, or alternatively, if you're seeing my new slide.
Blank green right now.
It's blank?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let me get my other control panel set up, and then we'll try to share that as well. Okay. You are sharing your application now. Sharing Google Chrome, share application, Firefox, no, share.
Briefly there.
Okay, so I think right now what we should be seeing is Safari, and it should have the control panel.
Yep.
So I don't want Firefox. All these screen sharing programs are a little bit different, so it does take me some time to get up to speed. So hopefully what you guys are seeing is it just the bulldogschools.org control panel, or are you also seeing my presentation as well?
Just the control panel.
Good, perfect, perfect, perfect. So have some of you guys already signed up for some domains with your school addresses? Does this control panel look familiar?
Yes.
Good, 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 very good. So let's sort of walk through what you get here. This is the main page when you log in. It identifies the primary domain name that you signed up with. So in this case, bulldogschools.org is the domain name that I bought from GoDaddy and that I registered. And it's saying that I can, manage some information about this account. I can add some domain names. I can add some users. So this first blue box is kind of the main actions that a lot of our users are doing. They're managing the account information. They're putting in more domain names. They're adding more users. As we look down, we're seeing what sort of services we have enabled globally. So in this case, I have documents enabled, I have chats, I have groups, I have sites, and I have mobile. So at the very highest level, these are the applications that I have available. Now, if I'd like to add more, I can always click on Add More Services. And I need to log in again. Great. So let me show you how we got here. So if I'm logged in, then I go to Add More Services. Great. And this shows me the Google services at the top. So these are the things that our engineers spend a lot of time on perfecting and making nice. So for example, I don't have email on now. To add it, it's as simple as clicking Add It Now. I don't have video. I can add it now. Posting services, as we can talk about later, is a great thing for K-12. The largest subset of that is free for K-12. There's some other things like Contacts, Google Wave, which I think is being deprecated, Calendar. So all these other services, if you'd like to enable them for users, you click them here, and then you go back to your dashboard, and they'll be there. So let me give you an example. Let's say I need to add Calendar. So I'm going to go to Add More Services, and I want to roll out Calendar for all my users. And if I'd like to add more Calendar, it's added now. And now, if we go back to the dashboard, we see that in addition to all other services that are available, we also have Calendar. So that's how you add and remove services. So back to what we were talking about initially was domain names, organizational units, and groups. So let's walk through each of those. If we'd like to make organizational units, we click on the Organizations and Users tab. And this is going to give us our organizational structure tree here on the left-hand side. So you see at the very top it says Bulldog Schools. That's our root OU. And that's where we're setting the services that will be available to everyone underneath that. So right now, anyone who lives inside bulldogschools.org is going to have a calendar, documents, groups, sites, and Google Talk. So I can see that within that root OU, I have 3 users, Dana Nguyen, Eric Edens, and Jackie S. So if I look at, let's say, Dana Nguyen and go to Privileges, we see that she is, Resolve Settings, we see that she has Google Calendar, Google Docs, Google Groups, Google Sites, and Google Talk. So she is now able to use whatever her OU specifies. But let's say, for instance, I have some students. And with our students here is Becky Evans. I really don't want them to be using, chat. So what I've done here is let's go back to the normal setting here. Inherited, save changes. So now I've inherited what our root OU, Bulldog Schools, had. I have that Google Talk is enabled. But for students, you know what, I probably don't want our students using chat at my school, so I'm just going to make sure that chat's disabled. So I click Override the Settings to override what they've already inherited. Then I click the button to toggle it to off, click Save Changes. And now any student within the student OU is going to inherit the rule that they cannot have chat. So let's check that for Becky. We'll click on Becky's name, we'll go to her Resolve Settings, and now we're seeing that chat has been disabled. So when Becky logs in, she will not know that chat exists. She won't have a button for it, it won't be available for her. For all intents and purposes, she won't know it exists. And that will work for all the other services as well. So we see some schools, for example, who disable mail, or for whatever reason they disable calendar. So this allows you to finely tune for each user what services you can have on and what services you can have off. So the way I'd like you to think about organization units is that it's allowing you to set for a group of users or a subset of users what services they can use and what services they cannot use. So let's look at how you create a new organizational unit. So under bulldogschools.org, I have IT admin, I have staff, I have students, but maybe I want to have another one that's maybe power users. So let me create another organizational name, power users. So by doing that, I click to add organization. It gives me this window. I get to specify the name, maybe a description. These users will have the highest level of security and policies. We add the organization. And now I'm able to, if I have some teacher at some school site who's always begging for more, I can always just throw them into this power users, and they're able to use more and more of the applications. So that's how we add a sub-organization. So let's say we want to see how to move somebody. So let's say that Dana Nguyen, she's a power user. She's always begging me for more and more stuff. So it's as simple as clicking on her name here. We go to move to power users, move to organization. Now it's going to pull Dana's objects out of the root OU, move her into power users, and now she's in here, and she inherits anything that we set on power users. So are there any questions over organizational units, when you would use them, when you wouldn't use them? Okay, okay. That sounds good. Okay, so good. So the first way, just to recap, organizational units, users live in one OU, they inherit the policies of that OU. So let's move on to the next tab, that's groups. That's another way that we're able to chunk our users together. So to recap, the reason that we would use groups is either to have a mailing list or to select a group of people who can share documents with each other. So I've created some already, English teachers, 5th grade students, science teachers. Maybe I want to make a new group for principals. So let's make a new group, school principals. And so we'll give it an email address, school-principals. This needs to be a valid email address. So it can't have any weird characters like asterisks, or I think ampersand is not a good either. So just make sure this is a valid email address. And then you get to set the access level. So if it's public, that means that anyone in the world, anyone within your domain can find this group, they can add themselves to it, they can post messages. So if it's sort of a selective group, such as school principals, you wouldn't want a student to join it, for example. So let's look down at team. So team says that, it's a tight group of people, and that means that, the managers need to be able to just decide who can add to it, but anyone in the school can post messages. That's probably not good for principals. Let's look at announcement only. So an announcement only would mean that the manager of the group, so whoever the owner of the group is, can post messages to it, but anyone in the school can read it. So the reason you would use this is if it's like a group that's, let's say, Oak Hills Elementary School, and you want just the principal to broadcast a message out, and she's the only one who can broadcast it out, but anyone else can read it. I think the last one is what we'd probably want for principals, where it says only the manager of this group can invite new members, and only members can post messages, view the member list, and read the archives. So what this does is it creates a very tight membership group for principals, so maybe they can talk about things that are specific just to them, perhaps staffing issues or funding issues. So they're the only ones that know that this, who's in the group, they're the one who can read the messages, and it's a very private group. So we'll create. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Could you bump the font size up a bit? It's really hard to read on this end.
Yeah. Let me bump the font size up a little bit. So I created the school principals group. Let's go back to what it looked like for the access settings. Now this access settings is going to let you fine tune it even more. So you can decide who can view, who's able to see it. So it really allows you to fine tune in who's able to see these groups and who's able to join these groups. So here at Google, for example, I'm sure they have executive membership groups that I don't even know exist, and that's how it should work. And similar in a school, the principals should have their own groups where they can discuss things with each other, and no one else needs to know that they exist. But you can also fine-tune it in other ways. So this really allows you to tune in who's able to A, know the group exists, B, post to it, and then who within the group can post to it. So it actually allows you to tune in a lot of these fine-grained settings for groups. We find that groups is sometimes one of the mysterious features of Google Apps, but we think is one of the stronger features. So we save those changes, and let's jump back to our control panel. So now let's say that we want to add a principal. So let's say that Eric at Bulldog Schools .org. Let's say that he's a member, so let's add him. And I don't know why it keeps bouncing me out. So we add, let's see, did it add me? No, it didn't. Eric at bulldogschools.org. We added a member. Great. So it adds me as a member. So you're able to add in, a chunk of users at one time, or similarly, you can just add them one at a time. And then as the administrator, you can come in here, and if a principal leaves a school, for example, you can come in and delete him or her so that he or she is no longer accessing these groups. So the use case for a group, two things. One is a mailing list, and second is a document sharing. So if all the school principals are doing planning for 2012, they might start a Google site, and they only want each other to see it and edit it, so they can add school-principals as the owner of the group or as a viewer of the group in the case of a site, and then they can all contribute to it. And in that case, no one else knows it exists. So it's a good way to set policies and access control lists for a large number of people. And they're dynamic as well. So in the case when we mentioned removing a principal, if let's say we remove a principal, then he or she, once they're removed from your admin control panel, is now lost access to any documents that they had shared with that group, similarly with sites. So it's a good way to manage your users. So are there any questions on groups, when you would use them, when you wouldn't use them? Nope. Okay, great. Good. Lastly is domain settings. So domain names, what I want the take-home message to be here, again, is branding. So it's entirely up to you where you want your students to live, where you want your teachers to live, where you want your admins to live. So in this example, let me remove this Bulldog students. It won't let me remove it because I have some people in it, but I can add another one. So let's say right now, I think as you can see on the screen, I have two domain names. The main one that's in bold, bulldogschools.org, I registered with that. That's the primary domain name. Now, in another example, I'd added bulldogstudents.org. And in that case, what I'd be doing is I would be putting all my teachers into bulldogschools.org. So when they're emailing out to the world, it's very clear that they're a teacher, they belong to the school, that they're representing the school. We see schools adding a secondary domain for their students for just the reason of we don't want them to be impersonating teachers. We don't want them to be impersonating principals. So if you feel like that might be a concern for your school, then you can add another domain name. So let's look at the process for that. So we're in domain settings. The tab is domain names. Now we click add a domain or domain alias. So let's add another one. Let's say it's bulldogparents.org. Under our agreement, it's definitely fine to add alumni and parents. So you might want to add some Bulldog parents. And we'll do continue and verify domain namemanship. As a quick note, this domain alias, this is used for legacy support. So if you have some old email address you want everybody to receive a blanket email to, that's when you would use this. I have not yet seen a school use it. It's usually just businesses. So that's usually left unchecked. So we're just adding it as a primary domain. So continue and verify domain ownership. And then this is where it's a similar process where they ask you to make an HTML file in your web root or make a CNAME record so that we're sure that you're controlling this domain. I'll verify it later. But if we go back now to our domain names, we see that we have Bulldog Schools, which is where we're putting our teachers. We have Bulldog Parents, which is where we'll be putting our parents. And we have Bulldog Students, which is where the students go. So a new great feature of our Google Apps control panel is that we're allowing you to control separate domain names that are freestanding from a single domain interface. A few months ago, if you were to try to do this, it would have required 3 different Google Apps accounts. You'd be having an administrator control for each one. You'd be setting these global settings for each one. So we heard actually a lot from schools that they would like to consolidate this under one control panel. So that's why we added this new feature. So let's jump back to the presentation. Right now, hopefully you should be seeing the presentation where it says a Bulldog or domain names, organizational units, and groups. Is that right?
Yep.
Perfect. This is working great. Okay. So quick recap here. I think this is the take-home message. This is worth the price of entry. Domain names. It's for branding. You can't set policies on it. You sort of can't set policies on it. It's really just to say, I want my users to be in this area if they're teachers. I want my students to be in this if they're, students. So you're dividing your users into different domain names. I think the key here is it's branding. The second way to do it is organizational units. And organizational units are allowing you to set policies. So they're allowing you to set what services go on, what services go off. As a hint of coming attractions, we will build this out more and more. So as you can imagine, there are some more fine-grained policies that you would like to set. This is exactly where you'll find it. So if you know in the future that you want students, to have certain sets of policies, definitely make your OU for students. In the coming months as we roll out new features, this is where you'll take advantage of it. Lastly is groups. So groups, the way to think about it is two things. One is a mailing address, or excuse me, a mailing list. So you can just shoot out an email to all your English teachers. Similarly, you can share a document with all your English teachers. So before we move on, are there any questions on just when you'd use each of these groups?
My question is related to the domains that you talked about. If I understood you correctly, if we already have a registered domain inside of the domain settings that you were just going over, if I add a new domain, do I have to also go out and register that, or is that all alias within our Google Apps? In other words, is that the only step one would have to take is to create a iDomainStudents.org, and then I'm done, or do I still have to get that registered with the domain servers out there?
So if I understand you right, you've gone through somebody like GoDaddy or Enom, and you already own another domain name. Is that right?
GoDaddy.
Oh, from Northwest ESD.
So I have a domain name for my school. If I'm understanding you correctly, if I want to add a subdomain, essentially, I'm doing that all within Google, and Google is doing all that redirecting for me, or we have to set up these key names?
Oh, that's a great. So are you, for example, let me go back to the control panel. So let's say that I didn't want to have Bulldog. No, leave this. Let me do a Bulldog parents. I'll decide. I really didn't want that one. What I wanted instead, if I understand you right, add a domain. I want parents.bulldogschools.org. Is that right? Parents.bulldog. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So perfect. So you'll do continue and verify ownership. Now we still need to verify that parents.bulldogschools.org is under your control. So it's kind of a roundabout way. So we'll actually have you make a CNAME record under parents. So it'll be something like some random string .parents.bulldogschools.org, and then that points to one of our servers so that we know that you own it. So if you already own bulldogstudents.org, and you have the ability from whoever gave you the domain name to create your subdomain, then by all means, yeah, you can add it here this way. Does that answer your question?
We will still need to create CNAME. Okay, yeah, that answers my question.
But we don't have to go back to that,
Yep.
to have that added.
Unless you wanted a new top-level domain like bulldogstudents.org. Then you would need to go register that one.
Yep, so you'd only have to repurchase. If you already own the top-level domain, then that's just the one time you purchase it. So if you purchase it through GoDaddy or something, then they allow you to make essentially infinite number of subdomains. So that's another way we see people do it. So I'm working with, I think Austin ISD is doing this. So I think they might be doing student.austinisd.org for their students, and then just austinisd.org for their teachers. So we're seeing it done a couple of ways. One is where people buy an entirely new domain name for their students, and another one is where they just simply tack on a subdomain. From our end, either way works. Does that answer your question?
We're good. Thanks, sir.
Yeah, great, good. That's a very good question. So I think that in the initial planning phase, the domain names is often the one that's going to take committees to decide what will be used and what won't be used. So it's not, for the most part, it's not really a technological decision. Once a decision has been made, it will take you guys 5 minutes to get everything set up. For the organizational units, that's just pre-planning to decide what policies will be set to whom. And then for groups, that's something that evolves over time in my practice. I've seen that people notice that they might need some science department chairs, so they'll add those later. Something that I'm not going to talk about at the moment, but feel free to look around online, is there's also user-created groups, so you can give your users the ability to create their own discussion groups, sort of just like a discussion forum. If we have time at the end, we can talk about that, but it's kind of an edge case. So, oh yeah, go ahead.
How would you change the top-level domain name? What's the process of that?
So if I understand right, you've registered bulldogschools.org, and then you want to change it to I don't know, some other thing like Bulldog. I don't know. You just want to change it, change what you've already registered. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So as a background on how our file system works, we use a hierarchy of hash keys to ensure that data is only seen by the right people. So in our original design, this primary domain name is ingrained in this big long string that decides who can access what. So in some ways it's an astronomical task to change it on our end. In other ways it's not really feasible. So it's something that we've been thinking about, trying to figure out for the last couple of years, and at this point it's just not possible. So let's say that you just have to change your domain name. My recommended way of doing that is to go to domain settings, you go to domain names, and then you add an extra domain for your new domain name. So let's say you want to change your domain name from bulldogschools.org to bulldogschools.edu or something. So you would add that as an additional domain, and then we have an API call where you cycle through every user, and then you just say, every user, I want to move you from this domain to the other domain. So for them, they would now think that they're in the new domain, and by all means they are in the new domain. The only backward compatibility would be you as the administrator would still have to log into the primary domain name cPanel, i.e. bulldogschools.org, but for everyone else, for the principals, for the teachers, for the students, they would think they have a new domain name. Okay. Alternatively, we have seen some people go through the process of just mixing their old account, making a new one with a new domain name. That will entail setting everything up again, number one. Number two is migration. So some things migrate nicely. Mail migrates pretty nicely. Contacts migrate pretty nicely. Calendar migrates pretty nicely. But we see a lot of teachers making a lot of sites. And sites, it's a very, very manual process at this point to migrate sites. And so the reason I recommend schools to not go that route is that now teachers have this huge burden of migrating their sites over, and it can be a big, big pain. So the best case for the current way to do it is just to add an extra domain from domain names domain settings, domain names, add another domain, and then use our provisioning API to move all your users over.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, great. Great. So this is sort of the work that's usually done on paper beforehand. So, a few committee meetings, figuring out your domain names, figuring out your OU structure. Groups you can sort of put off until later. And then, go in and actually set them up. If it takes more than, 20 or 30 minutes to set this up, then we've done our job wrong. We want to make this actual part of the process really easy. So if it's taking you an inordinate amount of time to add new domain names and OUs, let me know, and I'll let the right people know that we need to fix our process. So this should be, once you have it all planned out, this should be very straightforward to get set up.